Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. The story begins 6 years after a NASA probe crashed in Mexico, spreading the extraterrestrial life samples it carried on board. The organisms developed rapidly and took over half the country, creating what is called the infected zone. In a military convoy near there, one of the soldiers informs the base that they have just rescued 2 civilians, a man and a woman. Suddenly, the vehicle is attacked, and chaos ensues. As the man desperately tries to help the woman, the soldiers attempt to take down a giant alien creature. Eventually, we hear the commander approving an airstrike, which is more effective against the alien but very risky for the humans present. Then we meet photographer Andrew, an American who is in Mexico for work. Amid the wreckage of a hotel, he tries a few phrases in Spanish and discovers which hospital the survivors were taken to. At the emergency room, he says he is looking for a woman named Sam. However, after all this effort to find her, he simply asks if she is okay and leaves. When he calls a colleague and starts complaining about the situation, we find out that Sam is the daughter of his boss, the owner of the newspaper. Andrew came to the outskirts of the infected zone in hopes of capturing a historic photo. He waited 3 years for this opportunity, and now he will have to abandon the project to accompany the girl. The colleague tells him he just needs to take the heiress to the coast, and then he is free to return and continue his work. Andrew hangs up after repeating that the answer is no, but soon after, we see him in a taxi with Sam. In the midst of the destruction, she starts talking to the driver and asks if he feels safe living there. The man replies that these things only happen from time to time, and everyone just goes on with their lives. At the train station, she calls her father and suggests that he stop watching the news, saying that the media tends to show everything much worse than it really is. When he asks if she called her fiancé, Sam frowns and changes the subject. Then her father asks to speak with Andrew, and this time, the message is very different from what he arranged with his colleague. Her boss wants him to take the girl to the United States, and Andrew lacks the courage to refuse. On the train, Sam asks if he has ever photographed an alien, and he says that, for now, only the carcasses. Not hiding his bad mood, he comments that this was his chance for a front-page photo. In the middle of the night, the loudspeakers announced that there was a problem with the tracks ahead, and the train will be forced to turn back to the starting point. Despite the girl's concerns, Andrew decides to disembark right there, saying that the infected zone is miles away. When the train leaves, she becomes anxious to realize they are in the middle of nowhere. The two knock on the door of the nearest house and ask for help from a resident named Rosita. She shows them on the map where they are and explains that they are still 100 kilometers from the coast. Because of the creatures, no one travels at night around there, so the chance of getting a ride is also dismissed. In addition, Rosita explains that the Navy will close the coast in 2 days. This means that if Sam does not get there before then, she will be trapped in Mexico for at least 6 months. With nothing to be done at the moment, the two accept Rosita's invitation and spend the night there, dining with the family and playing with the children. The cartoon on TV shows how the situation has been normalized, featuring a friendly alien and characters teaching how to put on a gas mask for when there are air interventions. Later, the news reports that the new American president has just doubled the defense along the newly built wall to keep the creatures south of the border. The next morning, the duo continues their journey, hitchhiking to the bus station. The tension between them diminishes as Sam sees Andrew showing a genuine interest in people's lives, not just chasing down tragedies to photograph. During the trip, the road signs inform them that the infected zone is getting closer. Arriving at the port area, Sam becomes worried about the military presence, fearing it may be too late for the crossing. Andrew shows that there are still boats leaving and explains that the patrol is normal since the infected zone is just beyond the fence. Another bilingual saga is needed until they find out where to buy tickets. Shocked by the exorbitant price, they try to negotiate, and Sam even shows her passport. Praises her photo but maintains the same price, making it clear that there is no special treatment for Americans. Leaving there less wealthy than when they entered, the duo opts for a cheap hotel to spend the night. Andrew waits in Sam's room while his own is being cleaned and takes the opportunity to check the news. The reporter explains that this is the beginning of the periodic migration of the creatures. The event is already known but is getting worse each year, as the number of aliens keeps increasing. According to the news, The conflict is still far from that area, so Andrew convinces the girl to take a walk around the city and enjoy the last night of the trip with plenty of corn and tequila. Despite the relaxation, the cheerful streets are not far from the somber area where several memorials were erected in honor of the victims, many of whom were just children. Over a pile of piled bones, a plaque says that those were never identified. It becomes clearer that the local population is more afraid of the airstrikes than the aliens, and a graffiti on the street asks who the real monster is in this story. On the way back, Andrew tries his luck with Sam, making all kinds of excuses to be invited in, but he is unsuccessful. After thanking her for the outing, she closes the door and calls her fiancé, but decides not to leave a message. At 6 in the morning, the general announcement begins that the last boat is about to leave and the port will be closed indefinitely shortly after departure. Andrew is still sleeping when Sam knocks on his room door. She invites him to have coffee before the trip, but her mood changes upon seeing that he spent the night with someone else. Realizing that she is angry, Andrew rushes after her and asks if she is really determined to go home. She says yes, asking him to get the tickets, but when he returns to the room, the girl is no longer there. He becomes furious upon discovering that she has stolen his things, including the tickets and both passports. Again speaking with the attendant, they explain that they were robbed, but cannot obtain any compassion. Furthermore, the boat has already departed, and the only option left is to cross the infected zone, which incurs various security costs and heavy bribes, doubling the already absurd amount. Andrew offers his watch and the camera, but the total does not even come close. Even though Sam assures that her father is very wealthy, the promise to pay upon reaching the other side means nothing. However, when she takes off her engagement ring and shows that they are diamonds, the conversation takes a turn, and Andrew rushes to include a ticket for himself in the offer. Soon after, a car takes them to the mandatory inspection post at the edge of the infected zone. The absence of passports seems to be a serious problem until a specific employee is called in. Here, the bribery part comes into play, and the two's passage is approved. Already within the infected zone, a mediator negotiates the trip with a man named Juan. He agrees to take them to the American border but warns that he cannot help them cross it when they arrive. The mediator does not even pass the information on to the travelers and almost shoves them onto the boat, visibly eager to get rid of them. Andrew feels a bit suspicious of this behavior and also finds it strange that there are no other passengers. With little choice, they board the boat with Juan and his assistant, Carlos. The first leg takes several hours, and then Juan makes a stop to refuel. From within the forest, guttural sounds begin to emerge, putting everyone on high alert. Sam seems a little curious, but Andrew insists that she get on the boat quickly, and they continue the trip. Shortly after, there is an explosion in the engine, and the vessel suddenly stops. Carlos and Juan begin repairs immediately, as it is getting dark. The boat is still stopped when night falls, and the sounds begin again, a little weaker this time. Startled, Carlos tells Juan that he saw something, and everyone points their flashlights in the same direction. Something is moving on the river's surface, and it is approaching at an alarming speed. Very frightened, Sam is indignant that Andrew is taking pictures at a time like this, but he justifies his actions, saying there is not much to be done. Then the thing gets very close, revealing that the visible part is, in fact, a plane wing. Some reddish flashes appear beneath the aircraft, synchronized with the noise. Everyone watches the scene almost holding their breath until two giant tentacles suddenly wrap around the plane, plunging into the river shortly after. Carlos rushes to finish the repairs, and Juan guides the boat away as quickly as possible. The next morning, a group of armed men is waiting on the riverbank when the boat arrives. Andrew asks what is happening, and Juan says those are his friends, with whom the two will complete the rest of the journey on foot. The change is not welcome at all, primarily due to the arsenal that the new guides carry. Sam translates everything that Andrew does not understand from Spanish, conveying orders to hurry along while it is still light out. Despite this, the leader of the group gestures for them to stop walking, suddenly asking for silence. There is a sound coming from the jungle, and everyone tries to identify the source until someone warns that it was a false alarm, as it is just a lost cow. Another day passes, and by late afternoon, the two are completely integrated with the new guides. They light a campfire in camp in the middle of the forest for the night. Andrew asks what time they plan to continue walking the next day, and they explain they will wait for a family. Talking about the wall, the Mexicans laugh at the American president's efforts, saying it is impossible to contain nature this way. Having lived in that region for years, the group has grown accustomed to the aliens. They have learned the creatures' habits and know how to avoid danger. They only become unpredictable and more aggressive during attacks by the American army. Andrew is shocked to learn that chemical weapons are being deployed in that area. One of the Mexicans, named Miguel, begins to speak with him in English. He says that the target of the chemical attacks is the trees of the forest, which are all infected. As Andrew does not seem to understand, Miguel grabs a flashlight and takes the two to a tree. He shows that there are several organisms wrapped around the trunk, emitting that same reddish light and even appearing to interact with humans. Miguel says they detach from the trees when they grow and then go to the water to reproduce. Only now do Sam and Andrew understand what the infection is that the authorities want to combat at all costs. Later, one of the guides keeps watch over the camp while everyone sleeps around the fire. In the middle of the night, someone begins to shout warnings over the radio, waking everyone up. Some of the Mexicans mention the family that has not yet arrived, but there is no time to wait for them. Andrew also cannot find his camera. The group splits into several cars and travels in a state of alert, stopping at every suspicion. Seeing that everyone is putting on their masks, Andrew begs them to at least lend one to Sam, but they are too frightened to listen to him. Miguel tells everyone to stay quiet and sees that the people who had left the front car are running back as if they had seen something scary. As soon as they enter, the tentacles of an alien lift the car into the air as if it were a toy. Everyone is in shock at the scene, and then the car is dropped from the heights, almost on top of them. To Andrew and Sam's despair, everyone else starts getting out of the car, shooting at the creature. Lacking the courage to flee with them, the two only huddle in the back seat and hope that the monster ignores them. Ironically, this would have been a golden opportunity for Andrew if he had the camera, as the alien passes right by him before engulfing the car behind. Miraculously, the middle car escapes the confrontation unscathed, sheltering Sam and Andrew until dawn. Investigating the area, Andrew sees one of the cars on top of a tree and finds his guides lifeless. Holding his breath, he retrieves his camera and takes a gas mask from the deceased. Anxious about the delay, Sam goes after him, and the two find the car of the family that was supposed to arrive. Both are devastated by the horror of the scene, and Andrew covers one of the children with his blanket. Then the crossing continues, now without any company or transportation. They walk all day until they stumble upon one of the famous Aztec pyramids and decide to climb to the top. The view of the American wall is haunting, and Sam begins to cry, thinking that life is completely different on the other side. Protected from the creatures atop the pyramid, they decide to sleep right there and then resume their walk when the sun rises. When they finally reach the border, there is no one to check if they can pass. Andrew finds this very strange, and his impression only worsens as they walk through the empty streets. Entire blocks have been destroyed by what appears to have been an airstrike. Seeing the jets soaring across the Texas sky, the two decide to put on their masks, just in case. Then Andrew shows Sam a colossal carcass that collapsed on a house, confirming the suspicion that the aliens have finally managed to pass through the wall. Sam is afraid to get closer, but Andrew assures her that there is no danger. While he enters the house to photograph the defeated giant, she looks for survivors, without much hope. Then, the two begin to hear a strange sound that does not seem to be extraterrestrial. It is the sound of poorly lubricated wheels squeaking as they move. Stepping outside to investigate, they come across a woman talking to herself while walking down the street, pushing a cart full of things. Sam approaches more closely and sees that the woman has a very dirty face and seems confused. Unable to communicate, she responds to Sam's questions with a duck imitation and then continues pushing her belongings away. All over the city, there are signs indicating that an emergency evacuation occurred sometime in the past few days. Following the arrows, the two arrive at a brightly lit gas station, which seems more like a mirage. Calling the police, Andrew is informed that the nearest patrol will be sent to pick them up, and now they just have to wait. More relaxed now, the two talk about their plans for the next day, and Sam no longer mentions reuniting with her fiancé. Keeping hope in check, Andrew says he will make a call, giving her privacy to do the same. At the payphone, he becomes emotional hearing his son's voice. His relationship with the boy's mother was very brief, and the child does not even know that Andrew is his father. Sam's conversation is much colder, and she apologizes for her tired tone, repeatedly insisting that she is fine. However, she is still very undecided and says goodbye to her fiancé, telling him that she loves him. A storm begins to form while the two rest, and no one sees when a lightning bolt illuminates the immense alien. The bell rings, indicating the door has opened, and Sam smiles, thinking it is Andrew who has entered. Her expression completely changes when she sees the thin tentacles unrolling inside as if they were probing the air for prey. Andrew wakes up to the creature's screeches and can hardly believe the size of that thing. Hidden behind a shelf, Sam observes the behavior of the tentacles and sees that two of them are stuck to a television set. She unplugs it, abruptly shutting off the screen, and the tentacles retract in response. Outside, Andrew watches in awe as a second alien, equally enormous, arrives. Face to face, the two begin making sounds as if they are having a conversation. Then the tentacles touch until they are completely intertwined. Putting fear aside, Sam also steps out to witness the incredible spectacle. After the pair of monsters separates and each goes their own way, Sam says she no longer wants to go home. As she kisses Andrew, military vehicles arrive at the station. Announcing that this is a restricted area, the soldiers separate the couple with no delicacy. At that moment, one of them informs the base about the rescue of two civilians, a man and a woman. Then we return to the beginning, where we see the same convoy being attacked by the large alien on the road.